Hey fam, welcome to Life More Abundantly, the podcast where we talk Black health like we talk everything else, real, out loud, and with love. I'm Dr. Ebony Haynes.
And I'm Dr. Tanisha Drennan. We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get into today's episode. Hey, Ebony, what's up first today?
So last week we ended our conversation with our Herbal Tea segment, where one of the topics focused on the America's Next Top Model documentary. And so we talked about a lot during that segment, but one of the things that we didn't wrap up, and I think we need to put a bow on it, is that whole concept of what it means to be in relationship with each other, right? So we talked about Miss J
Right.
having had a stroke and then not being visited by Tyra Banks, right? So
Yeah.
Miss J is the individual who showed not only Tyra Banks how to walk, but also all of the models on the America's Next Top Model show. And
Mm-hmm.
so for you to be in this long-term friendship, supposedly with
Mm-hmm.
someone, and then they have a medical emergency, and then to not show up for them, I think is worth us diving into just a little bit.
Sure. And then even kind of in conjunction with that, I had watched an episode of The Sherry Show, and two of the producers were on there with Miss J. I think the other guy's name was Jay as well. And he was saying that Tyra, had asked him to help her create this show and how he was so excited to help her, expand her legacy, especially since she has
Mhm,
such an impact in the modeling world. And before it was time for him to leave the show, they had always said, Let's not go through management, let's not go through our agents, but let's always talk
mhm,
to one another." And when he was
mhm.
ready to leave the show, she said she was disappointed and then never spoke to him again. Everything else on that last season that he was a part of was through other producers, management, so forth and so on. And to this day, she's not spoken to him anymore except for on camera. And so these are 2 decades, plural, long relationships, right, that
Right.
suddenly were abandoned. And I know in 2026, I hear a lot of protect our peace and, it's okay to cut people off. But is it? Is it okay to just be like, well, this is my life and I'm done? What do you think?
I think it's tough because I think I've been in both situations, right, where a relationship has just run its course,
Mhm.
and then where something has happened where there has been a disruption in the relationship to the point where we can't get it back. And so I think that maybe the mature response is always the conversation. Even if it's an
Mhm.
uncomfortable conversation, it really is just we need to have the conversation so that we
Mhm.
can just acknowledge where this relationship is so that there is no confusion. I think that maybe had that conversation been had, then there wouldn't have been an expectation that Tyra was going to come and visit anybody in the hospital should,
Okay.
something happen, right?
Mhm.
But it's been several years and, Tyra still hasn't shown up, but it obviously is a situation where someone is expecting her to show up
The
because
expectation. Yeah, that's good.
yeah, yeah. And so why is that expectation there? Well, it's probably because
Mm.
the friendship has dissolved, but that dissolution hasn't really been resolved. It hasn't been accepted by
Mhm.
both parties.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I think with all of us, we have to get to a place where we're just mature enough to have that conversation and not ghost people, regardless
Right.
of what kind of relationship it was.
So I think,
Mhm.
this is a good topic for us to reevaluate how we engage with people and how we place unknown or unrealistic expectations on people.
Right, right. But at the
Right.
end of the day, if we are in true relationship with each other, if there is something that I need to know, then you need to make a phone call or you need to send a text message directly
Mhm, mhm.
so that you know that I'm aware and then gives me the opportunity to respond
Right.
and you the opportunity to determine if my response rises to the level that you feel it should given the type of relationship that we have. And then we move forward from
Sure,
there.
sure. And I also think, especially as adults, asking for what we need and want,
Mhm.
right? You can say no. You have the prerogative to say no, but instead of me being offended for what I didn't ask for, the onus is on us to ask for what we want. "Hey, Ebony, can you come see me? I'm in the
Mhm.
hospital and I'm
Mhm.
having a hard time." You know what I mean? And I know most
Absolutely.
people are not willing to be that vulnerable. We put the word they
Mhm.
should know, they should have, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, but we should. If we're not getting what we want and need as adults, we ought to be able to ask for what we want and need.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I'll be honest, that was me. You know, the person who did not ask, the person who
Mm,
just assumed, like, if you're in a relationship with me, you know me, right?
mhm,
So you know what I need. You know that I have a hard time asking for things. You know that that's a very uncomfortable space. And it is what you said it is. It's vulnerability.
mm,
And I think that as a society, as a culture, we have made vulnerability taboo, and so
mm,
no one wants to be
mhm.
vulnerable, and so when I think about my friends who talk about how people have ghosted them, you know, they've been dating, and then someone just literally falls off the face of the earth one day, you know, I think it all has the same root, right? I don't wanna be vulnerable, I don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation
Yeah.
because of how it's going to make me feel. We talk about therapy a lot, but that was one of the things that I really had to process with my therapist to
Mm,
really understand that I do not like to be vulnerable.
gotcha.
And so, because I don't like to be vulnerable, because I'm always trying to show strength, because I don't want to show other people that I can't do, then I don't ask. I put up the front of the superwoman. I put up the
Mhm.
front of, you know, I can do it myself. And that is not who we're designed to be. And so
Right.
I think that having conversations like this really helps other people recognize that, you know what, maybe I have those characteristics as well that I need to work
Mm,
on.
mhm.
But also recognizing that we can't often work on those things by ourselves. We need to
Sure.
do that in partnership with someone who is licensed, who's knowledgeable, who's educated, who can help us really unpack those things and identify ways that we can overcome those challenges that we have.
100% agree. Great point.
So, this therapy session was brought to you free by Doctors Haynes and Drennan.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But I am not a licensed therapist, so I can't give you any advice or counseling, but I do strongly recommend that you all seek help from someone who can help you unpack all of those things that we bring into relationship, whatever kind of relationship it is, right? But
Absolutely.
all of those things that we bring into relationship that we may not even realize that we're bringing into relationship.
Well, I am a board certified counselor, and so
Yes, you are.
I second everything that you just said. You did good, girl. You did good.
Thank you. And she's available, y'all, so if you need to make an appointment,
Please and thank you.
please and thank you. Awesome.
Okay.
All right, T, what's up next?
I really, really wanted to talk about what happened at the BAFTA Awards. The
Mm,
BAFTA Awards is an award show that takes place in England. I had never heard of it before, but now we will never
mhm,
forget it. Oh my gosh.
correct.
And well, let me start out by saying shout out to Ryan Coogler, first best screenplay award ever given to a black
Yes,
man from that show. So I'm so happy about that. And I think it's absolutely well deserved, right?
right, so
Uh,
proud.
but the first thing that happened at the show is Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo are presenting the first award of the show, and a man in the audience, who is like a leader in the advancement for Tourette syndrome awareness, shouted out the N word. And there are two issues. One, for me, that he shouted out, and then two, that the BAFTA Awards was not a live show. And so it could have been edited out
Right.
as other
Mhm,
inappropriate things that happened at the show were edited out. And just for
mhm,
our listeners, so we can get a succinct understanding of Tourette syndrome, or TS. It's a nervous system disorder. It's characterized by involuntary repetitive movements, and vocalizations known as tics, right? It starts between the ages of 5 and 10, and you can have motor tics, which is head jerking, just odd movements, vocal tics, which include involuntary sounds, repeating words or phrases, and rarely using socially inappropriate words. So I think that's
Mhm.
interesting.
The rarely part.
The rarely part, using socially inappropriate words. And so we want to express sensitivity to this community that has this syndrome and these symptoms. But like anything, if you had an involuntary jerk and you hit someone in the head, will you offer an apology? So if
Mhm.
you involuntarily shouted out this racial epithet, wouldn't you immediately say, "I apologize"? To my knowledge, and I keep watching this story, he apologized for his outburst, but not for the word, not for
Mhm.
the impact it made. So no accountability. And the BAFTA award shows, so far, I haven't seen them acknowledge anything. With the exception that they made a disclaimer at the start of the show that there were some people in the audience who had Tourette's because a film about Tourette syndrome was
Mhm.
being
Right.
recognized.
Right.
And so I just want us to, evaluate. I've never been so offended by so many things in Black History Month in my entire life. But at what point, like, is accountability going to show up in these spaces?
Yeah, I did hear that the BBC is reviewing how this was allowed to air without being edited. So I
Mm,
do think that they are working toward some level of accountability, but at the same time, it's a day late and a dollar short because
yes.
you didn't appear to address this issue until it became international news and
Mhm.
there was a ton of outrage. Where is that accountability? As soon as the show is done, it's edited and ready for public consumption, what are the measures in between there to make
Mhm.
sure that you
Mhm.
are not airing content that's inappropriate? And it's hard for me to believe that an organization as big as the BBC, just like if it was any other network here in the
Mhm.
United States, right?
Mhm.
You can't tell me that someone didn't watch it before
Right.
it
Right.
aired.
Right.
And so there's just no excuse for it.
Sure.
I could see if it was some low level home produced kind of
Right.
thing,
Right.
but this is not that. We have to hold everyone accountable and make sure that people are doing right by others, even when it means that you have to call out bad behavior and evaluate your own processes and systems.
Mhm, and then on the flip side of that, we, right, as people of color are always, expected to take it on the chin. Like, we're
Mhm.
applauding Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo for just keeping to the task, not responding, and right, I don't know what else they were supposed to do in that moment, but m maybe yell back your mother. No, I'm saying But I just feel like we are constantly forced to stuff down our emotions when things like this happen. We're called
Right.
to be professional. We're called
Mhm.
to go high when they go low, right? And we are also called to not perpetrate angry Black people
Mhm.
um, when we have
Right.
cause to be angry.
And let's just be honest, if this culture, the society was not what it was, then this term would not even be in this
Mhm.
person's vernacular, right? I understand Tourette syndrome. However, as a society, we also have to take ownership for the
Sure.
fact that that term exists
Mhm.
and we have to interrogate the root of that and then work like hell to make sure that these things don't happen, that this term is not normalized, that these behaviors are not normalized.
Absolutely.
But that also means that we have to acknowledge our history.
Mm.
And
That they wanna
and
erase. Mm.
Oh, absolutely. And start identifying the ways that white people, white culture, whiteness, let me put it like that,
Mhm, mhm.
whiteness, because whiteness is not about being white, right? It's
Right.
about you leaning
Mindset.
into all of the privileges and the
Mhm,
mindset that comes
mhm.
with people of privilege and people who have historically been able to do whatever they wanted to do at the detriment of people who are non-white. And it brings me back to this book that I'm reading right now, which is amazing. Black Women Taught Us: An Intimate History of Black Feminism by Dr. Jen Jackson.
Mm,
In the chapter that I just finished reading, she opens up and she talks about how she matriculated at the University of Southern California and she took this class. It was a history class taught by this white guy. And the question that he presents at the beginning of the class is, what is white culture?
mhm.
And it seems like a simple question, right? And no one in the class wanted to pipe up, and of course, with her being one of 2 Black people in the class, she's not gonna say anything.
Right.
And so after no one answers, the professor says, "White culture is genocide."
Mm.
And there were white people in the class who got very upset, and,
Wow.
one at least one student walked out of the class, and the professor was like, "Hey, this is a history class, and so we have to unpack all of this history." That culture exists, and it
Mhm,
exists not just in the United States, right?
mhm,
So, across the globe, we have to unpack this culture that has been created that creates opportunities for people with Tourette's to know
mhm.
these terms that are very much inappropriate, and then they use them in spaces where they see Black people. And
Sure.
so I cannot imagine that this is the first time that this man has used those terms
Mhm.
in spaces where Black people are. So
Right.
his brain knows when I see Black people, I think
Right.
inward,
Right.
right? Otherwise, the term wouldn't even come out of his mouth.
Right.
And so let's just be honest, this is not just an indictment on this man, but it is
Right.
also an indictment on our worldwide culture that centers whiteness.
That's a great point. Well, I think that's a
Yeah,
good way to end that particular one. Huh. All right. So, one more thing I wanted to talk about. What we're talking about is so heavy. Like,
it's so
as we're
heavy.
ending Black History Month, it's crazy. Okay, but hold on, y'all. We're going to get to some fun stuff eventually.
We getting there.
We getting there. Okay. So, one more thing that I wanted to talk about is that in the news recently is a 70-year-old Florida Black man named Richard Ferguson, who on February 18th, 2026, was sentenced to 37 years in prison for his role, which I use that term loosely, in a car crash that killed a grandmother and her 3 grandchildren. Here are the key
Mhm.
details, right? In 2003, Mr. Ferguson allowed his 15-year-old son, who was unlicensed, to drive a car. The teenager ran a stop sign, causing a car crash, and it resulted in the 4 fatalities. He had 3 other friends in the car with him. They all walked away, and they're still alive. The jury found Ferguson guilty of manslaughter in October of 2025 due to culpable negligence and also for showing
Mhm.
reckless disregard for human life. Strong terms. His 37-year sentence is expected to, that's pretty much like, well, that is life, right? I think life is
Mhm.
25 years, so that's life
Mhm.
plus. And, the topic that I wanted to discuss is, should parents be held accountable for their children's
Mhm.
actions slash should parents only be held accountable for their children's crimes or actions, because nowhere in the news have I seen that this 15-year-old faced any penalties besides
Mhm.
the fact of losing his father to jail.
Mhm. That's heavy. That's a good question, though, and I think it is a timely one because we are starting to see more parents and grandparents be held responsible for the actions of their young people, and I struggle with this one because and this really hits home for me. I'll tell you why. I have a girlfriend, and when we were in high school, her parents used to let her drive. She was a
Mhm.
very responsible driver, but she did not have a driver's license. And I remember my girlfriend coming and picking me up one day and my mother had not gotten home from work. We go to a football game,
Mhm.
and when I come home, my mother is livid. And of course, I can't understand, like, why is she making such a big deal about my girlfriend driving
Right.
us to the football game? And my mother was trying to, like, drill in my head, she is unlicensed. This is a
Sure.
problem. I
Mhm.
think some of it in my case is that, in the country, if you will, there are lots of kids who drive who
Right.
are unlicensed. There are lots of adults who are
Right.
driving who are
Absolutely.
unlicensed,
And in
right?
the city
Eh
too, friend.
Right. But, I think that for me and having grown up in this rural area, that unlicensed people was so common that,
Sure.
you just don't think about it.
Mhm.
People drive,
Right.
but there are some other economic disparities that
Mhm.
exist and reasons why people are driving without a license. And that's another topic
Mhm.
that definitely needs to be unpacked, especially potentially with this story. As I've grown and matured and I have become an adult and I have children, grown children
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
I get it, right? We as parents are expected to set an example for our children. We're expected to follow the laws ourselves and then
Right.
also ensure that our children, for whom we are responsible, are also following the laws. And so while it's one thing to say, well, I didn't force my child to follow the law because I didn't know the law, right? Because we know that
Right.
there are
Right.
laws that get passed and the community really doesn't know about it until someone gets a ticket or whatever.
That's a good
That's
point.
one thing.
Mhm.
But this is a law that everyone in the country has to follow. You
Right.
cannot drive if you're not licensed. And
Mm.
even if you have a learner's permit, you have to be in a car with a
With a
licensed
license.
driver.
Right.
This dad knew that.
Yeah.
And so while I don't have a full picture of what their life is like, right? I don't have the full context.
Mhm.
Still, he knew. And it wasn't even like the son was just going to work, right? So let's say there was a situation where dad is working two jobs, can't take the kid to work, but the kid needs to work. And I'm not saying that that's excusable. I'm just saying that these two scenarios are not the same.
Right. Right. Right.
Right? The kid was in the car with some friends when this accident happened. So I think that a judge and jury would look at those two scenarios very differently. Like, was
Mm.
the child in the car for utility? Like, because this child
Mhm.
absolutely had to
Mhm.
get to work.
Mhm.
Um, and the parent maybe knew about it, but because of the circumstances, maybe we give them a pass, but it doesn't appear to be that way. So this one, I get why some people are like, the punishment is excessive. I still do think it's excessive, in
Okay.
terms of the years that the dad got. I do think that the child has some responsibility in this. Although, yeah, his dad
Absolutely.
let him do it.
Mhm.
He knew that
Mhm.
he couldn't
Mhm.
drive without being licensed. And I've seen kids much younger than this kid be in juvenile detention
Sure.
or be tried as an adult for
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
that are not as bad as this. And so how do you justify the dad
Right.
getting so much time, the child not getting any time?
Yeah, because, what I'm hearing you saying when I think about, what he was charged with, gross negligence, allowing a minor to access a vehicle, those are charges he's guilty of. Vehicular
Mhm,
manslaughter, in my opinion, he is not guilty of
mhm,
vehicular manslaughter. His son is.
mm,
And all the things that you said, and in our culture, this might be something new, but we have been seeing in the news periodically where parents are being held accountable. There have
mm,
been some shooting instances where the fact that the child had access to a gun and committed a crime, the parents um, have been sentenced. I haven't heard
mhm,
anyone being sentenced to life before, but they are being sentenced. I don't know. I'm still conflicted on this topic of parents
mhm.
receiving the full penalty for their children's actions. I think there's shared responsibility if you knowingly, right? Because that's the key word I think that
Right.
you highlighted. If you knowingly allow your child to commit a crime, but what if it's unknown? What if it's unknowingly?
Mhm,
You know, and that was the key thing in this case, in this particular trial, the judge and the attorneys kept trying to figure out, did Mr. Ferguson know that his
mhm,
child was taking the car? And I just think it's a worthwhile conversation to have in our families, as we talk to our children about responsibility, to even add that component. I'm responsible for your actions. Make good decisions.
And I think that that is also something that we have gotten away from in our culture, in the Black community, right?
Mhm.
Because 40, 50 years ago, our parents were very much like, "You represent this family,
Yes.
this house, and
Yes.
so when you go out into the community, you have to make sure that you are doing everything that you're
Right.
supposed to be doing by the book, right? Don't
Mhm.
draw attention to yourself,
Right.
right? Because we have a standard in this household. We have a standard in our
Mhm.
family. We have a standard in the Black community that we will not do things that will cause harm to you
Sure.
individually or us as a family or our community collectively.
Right.
And while that is immense pressure to put on Black people, at the same time, we recognize that it protected us. It
Right.
protected our kids, it protected our families, it protected our communities to an extent, right? And some people would say, okay, but you know what? That thinking is along the lines of respectability politics, right?
Right.
Why do we always have to show up and be perfect so that we can be acknowledged and
Yeah.
respected by people who don't look like us? And we tired of doing that. And so I
Right.
get it, but at the same time, there is still this need for us to remember that, and I don't know, this probably isn't the best way to say it, but it's like people still out to get us,
Right.
right? People are still out to attack Black culture, Black people, to put us, some people might think, back in our place, right? When
Mhm.
we hear "Make America Great Again," well, what does that
Mm.
mean
Right.
really,
Right.
right? Exactly, and so we can't give the legal system reasons to incarcerate us.
Yes.
So we have to, as parents, make sure that we are making good decisions
Mhm.
and recognize our responsibility is still to help our kids make good decisions and work within the system we're in.
Responsibility, I think, is the
Mhm.
key takeaway across all
Absolutely.
boards. Be
Mhm.
responsible. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that was heavy too,
That was
because I think
heavy.
sometimes, we as parents want to maybe relax the reins.
Mhm.
I think that there is a point where we remembered what it was like for us to carry that weight that our
Yeah.
parents put on us because of what they all had to endure. And so we relax for our kids. But,
Mhm.
this is just a hard reminder that we can't relax. We can't get away with the same things that, other folks get away with, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
We can't.
Absolutely.
So, agree with me or not, but, my sense is we have to learn how to navigate the system that we're in. That's how we succeed. That's how we stay alive. That's how we continue
Mhm.
to exist.
And it's interesting you would say that, because it just dawned on me, and please, listeners know I'm in general not a conspiracy theorist type person, but it did
I
bring to mind, is this another scare tactic? Is the penalty so harsh?
think
S-
so. And especially
So,
with it being Florida,
yeah, right.
mhm, we'll fix you, right? I just see that as okay, you think you smart, you think you uppity, so okay, we'll fix you.
Right.
And
And then now
so
all of us are like, listen, you used to drive, don't take my car and go
no,
nowhere.
mhm. That's right. I'm not saying that the legal system should not do things to deter because the fines that we get, the jail time that
Hmm.
we get, those
Hmm.
things are designed to deter bad
Right.
behavior,
Right.
right? But also there is supposed to be in our correction system, our judicial system, this idea of rehabilitation too. And so,
Right.
we have the worst
Absolutely.
correction system in the
Absolutely.
world.
Right.
And so, where's the grace? Where's the rehabilitation? Where is the
Right.
respect for people's humanity? And I don't see that present.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because this even could have been a house arrest or a sentence with stay type of, yeah, you're right.
Right?
No, I'm just saying it did not have to be life in prison for
Mm-hmm.
this. There could have
Mm-hmm.
been other ways that the judge could have chosen to exemplify justice, if you will. Now, don't get me wrong. But on the other side, there's a family who has four
Mm-hmm.
individuals, may they rest in peace, gone. And I can only imagine the outrage and the anger and all, and the wanting a hit on a platter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to discount that lives were lost because of
Mm,
this young man's actions. But I wanted to look at the full picture, because this young man didn't even do this intentionally. It did happen. It was an accident. So the guilt of that, now the guilt of shattering his family system, it's just, I wanted to talk about this, but it is such a sad, sad situation. But
mhm.
overall, I think it sends the message of having different conversations with our children, ourselves,
Yeah.
and just trying to be
And
proactive.
absolutely, and I think the other element of this is who was the prosecutor?
Mm,
Right? So we all know that we are underrepresented when it
mhm.
comes to serving as prosecutors in municipalities, and the
And
prosecutors
who was
get
on
to
the jury?
determine that's right. And so the prosecutors are the ones who get to determine what charges are brought against
Mhm,
people. And
mhm,
so if you have people who don't understand the different communities, and I'm not saying that prosecutors should just let all people get off or have relaxed charges just because they're black and brown. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm
mhm,
just saying that we need prosecutors who have compassion, but also understand that there are other remedies
mhm.
for addressing issues within community other than life sentences, especially given
Absolutely.
how much it costs to incarcerate someone.
Right,
So it's not just about, does this family feel good about the fact that this person goes off to prison? I think that that makes you feel good in the moment, but at the
right,
end of the day, you still lost your loved ones.
right.
And we also know that there is a huge place for restorative justice
Mm,
in our justice system, yet it's one of the most underutilized means of seeking justice, restoring communities, and maintaining individuals' humanity on both
absolutely,
sides. And
absolutely.
so we have to be more intentional to make sure that we have, people who look like us going to law school, being interested in becoming
Mhm,
prosecutors,
mhm.
but also we have to push our legal system, our justice system to place more emphasis on
Sure,
restorative justice
sure.
practices. And I don't think that as a community, we recognize that is something that we can do and we should be
Right.
doing.
Back to who we vote for and elect in office and
Mhm.
doing our due
That's right.
diligence on what their policies are. And I believe your mom brought up when we talked about that before about us serving as jurors. You know, a lot of times
Mhm.
most people across the spectrum try and get out of jury duty, right?
Right.
But when you talk about a jury of your peers, right?
Mhm.
We have to be willing to show up and serve. Not saying that
That's
it's
right.
guaranteed that we will be picked, but to
Correct.
say that us giving up, our few hours of or our few days of pay, or, all the things, the inconvenience of jury duty could really be the difference in saving a
Mhm.
life, right? And we have to be
Absolutely.
interested in helping our own.
Great
All
point.
right.
Ooh, child. This has been a heavy Black History Month. All the things that
Mhm.
have happened this month have been kind of heavy, but
Yeah, baby.
I'm still optimistic.
We're optimistic and
Mhm.
we're still standing. And so,
That's
yay
right.
to us as a people being resilient.
On this day in Black history,
Blackity black, black history.
we are sorry to you all for missing this, but last week we forgot to mention the anniversary of Ahmaud Arbery's death. So
Mm,
Ahmaud Arbery died on February 23rd of 2020, and as you all might remember, he was chased down by three men who called themselves protecting a neighborhood from
mm,
Ahmaud Arbery, who was just jogging through a neighborhood and just so happened to be curious about a house that was under construction
mm,
and what it looked like
mm.
on the inside, not knowing that it would result in his death by these
Right.
three vigilantes. These three men were actually convicted of murder and also of federal hate crimes, which we know often doesn't happen
Doesn't
in the
happen. That was a
United
rarity,
States.
right.
Yes, but we definitely wanted to make sure that we recognize the anniversary of Ahmaud Arbery's death.
Mm. We still heavy, but we're getting there. We getting this to some lemonade out of all of these lemons. But I would
Yes.
just like to mention also, we honor the lives of these individuals. We celebrate their birthdays, we remember them on their anniversary of their deaths. But I also just want to say, even in remembering Ahmaud Arbery, and last week we spoke about Trayvon Martin, is that
Mhm.
we also hold space for the unnamed, for the
Mhm.
unpopularized victims that these atrocities have happened to as well.
Right. Excellent point. All right. Well, in much better news, if
Thank
you
God.
will, we also have some things to celebrate as it relates to this day in Black history. So on
Yay.
March 3rd, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln signed legislation that created the Freedmen's Bureau. And so, for those of you who may not have heard of the Freedmen's Bureau, it actually was a federal agency that was established to help transition millions of formerly enslaved people to freedom by making sure
Mm,
that they had clothes, they had food, and most importantly, that they had education during the
okay.
Reconstruction period. So, this is the period where a lot of schools were established,
Oh.
and the Bureau cooperated with Northern aid societies, and those were pretty much like, white people who
Mhm.
felt that they had a responsibility in correcting the wrongs of
Sure.
slavery. And so those
Allies.
northern
Mhm.
absolutely. Those northern aid societies and local African American communities, mostly churches,
Mhm.
helped to build schools in the South. And so you see a lot of the HBCUs, the historically Black colleges and universities, coming into existence as a
Sure.
result of the assistance of the Freedmen's Bureau. And so we see schools like Howard University and Fisk, among tons of others that were created.
Yeah, that should be celebrated. I don't
Hmm.
think that I knew that, when I hear Abraham Lincoln, certainly I think, he gets credit for, freeing the slaves, but we also know that it was a political move on his part, although everything is
Correct.
political. And so
Everything.
sometimes I feel like I should shout out a word like the man with Tourette's when I hear his name. I think that this was an actual good thing that helped move us forward, and again, a reminder that sometimes we just need to take care of each other.
Hmm. Right.
I always say we push for separate but equal.
Hmm.
Sometimes the separate is better.
Mhm. And one of the things I appreciate about the Freedmen's Bureau was that they did also help to create professional opportunities for teachers, Black teachers. So they
Mhm.
train teachers and then they place teachers in schools. They often provided stipends to make
Mm,
sure that these individuals had financial resources to
great.
support them. There were houses that were built, or they secured housing with other people
Sure.
so that these Black teachers could, go to communities and educate formerly enslaved people. And so it's a reminder that we definitely have allies in this movement. We've always had allies
Absolutely.
in this
Yeah.
movement. And so while, our show really focuses on Black history, empowering Black people, making sure that Black people are healthy, we don't want you all to lose sight of the fact that we definitely could not be where we are as a people if we did not have the support of allies
Absolutely.
in this movement. So they too need to be celebrated.
They do need to be celebrated.
For sure.
All right. So we've gotten through that. Thank God, because everything we've
Mm.
talked about is so heavy. But and I think that's important too. Like, we do bring heavy topics to this format and this platform, and to know that our lives are heavy, right? When we
Mhm.
get depicted on television, we're laughing and singing and being jolly, but the reality of the matter is, yeah, there is a side of that, right? Sometimes we'll laugh and be like, Black people can't take nothing serious because we're always able to find joy in the
Mhm.
sorrow, right?
Right.
And so that is an important part of our lives, is bringing awareness to the fact that our lives are heavy. All of the things
Mhm.
that we've talked about have happened in this 28-day month.
Right.
Our lives are heavy, and those are just the things that we've highlighted, things that have been public. Speaking of Black history, we had the State of the Union the other day, and My man Al Green held up his sign, "Black people are not apes," and had to be escorted.
To be escorted. We can always depend on Rep. Al Green.
We
I
can
love Rep.
always
Al Green.
yes, he represents and holds it down every time.
Every
You know
time.
well, actually, my mother say he be doing that so he can get put out because he don't wanna stay there for the whole
I mean, I can't blame him if that's his
like,
motivation.
it's a
I
good
ain't mad
strategy.
at him.
It's a good strategy. It's a good strategy.
Yeah, that State of the Union address was hard to watch. So I can't
Yeah,
even imagine being in the chamber and listening to it. Oh,
an hour and 40 minutes of a tyrant saying how great he is,
mhm.
and then
And
calling everybody
sympathy.
else crazy who didn't applaud and stand up and sing and dance for him.
Mhm. Yeah, but somehow y'all s they
That
voted
part.
for him.
That part, because 'cause we're not
And you
gonna
knew what
pretend
you
that
were
no
getting.
black people didn't vote for him. So
That's
y'all who
true.
said it's about the money, look at us now.
Right.
I'm
How you
pointing my
doing
finger at you.
financially?
Right.
How your people doing financially?
That
Anybody been deported? Anybody been picked up because they were the wrong color? Just because they were the wrong color?
and the statistic
Yeah,
came out the other day that said African American women are the ones who majorly lost their jobs
that's right. Over
from, you know
300,000.
yeah, who were in
Yeah.
government sectors.
Mhm. Yep.
So,
So how's that working out for y'all who voted for
right,
him?
right.
Anyway.
Alright. Okay, so we got off that soapbox. What's up in the community calendar?
So this month, you all, is National Autoimmune Awareness Month. And so I
Mm,
felt it was important for us to talk about this because so often as a Black community, we don't necessarily think about autoimmune diseases, especially if they don't touch us or if they don't touch a loved one in a major way. But autoimmune diseases or autoimmune conditions are very prevalent within our communities. And so we wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that. This month is really dedicated to raising awareness, making sure that we are encouraging research and that we are supporting the over 50 million Americans who are living
mm,
with over 100 different types of autoimmune disorders.
wow.
And it's expected that about 1 in 15 people in the US has an autoimmune disease. And most of the individuals who are impacted by autoimmune diseases are women. So
Wow.
nearly 80% of the individuals that have autoimmune diseases are women, and they contribute to the leading causes of death among women under the age of 65.
Oh, did
That's
not know that
serious.
statistic. That's
Yeah.
serious. Wow.
So, let me just share a little bit about what autoimmune diseases are. Autoimmune diseases are health conditions that happen when your immune system attacks your body instead of defending it. And
Mhm.
so, think about your immune system, your antibodies are attacking things in your body that they think are unhealthy, which is a natural immune response, right? So, if you
Okay.
get sick, your immune system attacks the cold or the flu bugs that are in your body, the
Mhm,
bacteria or the
mhm.
viruses that cause you to be unhealthy, right? So those same things start attacking healthy parts of your body. And so they could be attacking your pancreas or your skin cells
Okay,
or your lungs, right? Healthy things that you need to live, but for some reason, something has been triggered in your body that causes them to attack healthy cells. So that's what
gotcha.
an autoimmune disease is.
Let's be clear, this is what sometimes is defined as the invisible disabilities.
Right. Because oftentimes these illnesses go untreated because they go undiagnosed. It's
Mhm.
hard to diagnose some of these illnesses. Sometimes you'll feel that something's not right within your body, but
Right.
you have a hard time explaining it, or the doctors have a hard time maybe understanding the symptoms that you're trying to explain to them. And
Yes.
so they may diagnose you with one thing thinking that that's what's going on with you, but later on, because your symptoms worsen and then certain other tests are ordered to try to figure out what's going on with
Mhm.
you, that's when your autoimmune disease gets diagnosed.
Okay.
And so there are some autoimmune diseases that may be a little bit more easily identifiable with certain tests, but those are also the most dangerous ones. So when we think about myocarditis, which in fact impacts your heart, when we think about vasculitis, your vascular system, like your blood vessels, but then type 1 diabetes, remember there are different types of diabetes. A lot of times we hear
Right.
about type 2 in our community, but type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. So
Wow.
that's, yeah, not related to necessarily your nutrition, but
Mhm.
because it's an autoimmune response. Muscular sclerosis, myasthenia gravis, all of those can be fatal to an individual.
Wow.
Yep, lupus is a big one. So we've seen a lot more Black women be diagnosed with lupus. So those are the ones that tend to be more common and can be fatal. But then others don't come with the risk of death. So vitiligo is one. So I had vitiligo. Many Black people have vitiligo. You may see people who have discolored skin, significantly discolored skin, like the pigment
Mhm.
in their skin is completely missing on parts of their body. A lot of
Mhm.
people have it on their face. They might have it on their hands. Or they have it on their legs. And so it's very visible. When you see them, you know that something's going on with them. That is where your immune system is attacking your melanocytes, the cells in your body that give your skin color.
Wow.
So, even that's an autoimmune disease. We just want to make sure that we're highlighting these things for you so that you are a little bit more vigilant when you go to the doctor and you're noticing changes in your body.
Sure.
And the doctor is like, well, this seems kind of normal. And they're not giving you the same level of care that they should if they knew that what you were actually dealing with was an autoimmune disorder. So, we want to make sure that you're being a little bit more vigilant, especially when you have those flare ups or attacks and they recur and you're not really sure why. Definitely want
Right.
to make sure that you're talking to your healthcare provider about that.
We want to tell you that flare ups can look like joint stiffness, reoccurring rashes, or sensitivity to the sun, hair thinning or loss. That's a
Mhm,
big one that a lot of people are just like, oh, I'm just shedding hair, or maybe it's the perm, or all these other things. But if all of a sudden your hair is thinning or lost, you want to look at that. Brain fog.
mhm,
I know I'm experiencing that just being perimenopausal, but if you're not in
mhm,
that bracket, to consider that excessive swelling, unexplained fatigue that lasts for months. Like a lot of times we're
mhm.
tired and we're just like, I'm tired because life is tiring, life been life.
Right.
But if it just goes on and on, then you need to look at that. And this is one that I hadn't realized, but even recurrent miscarriages, sometimes they can be
Mhm,
linked to autoimmune diseases. So, I think it's good for anything, but definitely in this context to document your symptoms. A lot of times
mhm,
we don't even realize what's going on. You're like, "Oh, my ankles were swollen last week," but when you get to the doctor, you forget all about it, or, you
mhm,
know, "My joints were hurting, but it was raining, I'm getting older." You know what I mean?
mhm.
Just try and keep a log, like a written log or in your phone so that you can be able to express how long these symptoms have been going on and their intensity
Exactly.
levels. You have to ask for labs. You gotta be like,
Mhm,
run it. Run these tests.
mhm,
Ask for the different specialists, ask for your second and third opinion, right? Because we
mhm.
know that our symptoms, especially as Black people, especially as Black women, are often dismissed. You know your body. And if you don't like what you're
Mhm.
hearing and you're not being affirmed where you are, go get another opinion and ask for specifically referral to rheumatology or
Mhm.
rheumatologist. I think in our community, that is an underutilized specialist. And sometimes that is the key person we need to get to help us figure out what's going on.
One of the other things I think our communities need to make sure that they're doing is talking to people. Talk to your loved ones, talk to your adult children, talk to your relatives. You probably have relatives who work in the healthcare system. Sometimes we are so proud
Yeah,
and we're secretive and we don't want people in our business.
right.
But because we don't talk to the people who have expertise in this area, it creates situations where we are misdiagnosed or we delay a diagnosis. And so I would encourage everyone to just open up and share. If something's not right with you in your body, you need to talk to somebody about it. And if you live in a rural community or a frontier community, we know that you don't have access to specialists like people who live
Right.
in urban communities or the suburbs. That creates a situation where you have to try to identify people who can be part of your team, family members,
Mhm.
maybe who live
Mhm.
in other communities.
Mhm.
Maybe you all need to talk about how you can fly out or drive out to somewhere else and maybe stay with a loved one so that you can go and you can have tests done at a facility that has these specialists available to you. Lean on your community. You don't have to figure all these things out by yourself.
Absolutely.
That's what your community is
Your
here
community
for.
is for, right? If we
Mhm,
share, if back to vulnerability, if we share what's going on with us, it could help someone else, right?
mhm,
And then being proactive as well. I was looking while you were talking. Someone just recently told me about, so for lack of a better word, forgive me, it's like a biological test to see how our chromosomes and all of that are made up,
mhm,
to help us identify exactly what's going on so that we can be more succinct in attacking things that are going on
mhm.
within our body. A genetics test.
Genetic
Thank
testing.
you, Lord.
Mhm.
Getting genetic testing. And then a friend of mine told me that there is a diet that is specified to your blood type. So even
That's
knowing your
right.
blood type and, looking up either by buying a book or researching what are the best foods to help
Mhm,
for my blood type, right? I think those two
mhm.
tests could be game changers, especially for a
Absolutely.
person with an autoimmune disease, right?
Mhm,
Um, and so sometimes we'll ask, like, how much does this test cost? And I was at the barbershop last week, and one of the barbers said it could cost you your life. And I
mm.
thought that is
Good
the
point.
most succinct way to describe it. Like, all right,
Mhm,
most of us got our income tax return. Maybe we need to pull a few dollars and go find out holistically, thoroughly what is going on
mhm,
inside our bodies, right? Because
mhm.
we're here to live life more abundantly, right? And we can't
That's
do
right.
that if we're suffering. And we can be
Mhm.
diagnosed with something and still not be suffering. And I think
That's
that's a
correct.
great distinction as well.
Yeah. You all also should be going out and getting an allergy test, right? So
Yes.
that you know what your body is responding to, whether that's
Mhm.
foods that
Mhm.
you can't consume, whether those are environmental triggers. You
Absolutely.
need to know that because one of the other things about autoimmune diseases is that something in the environment, something that you
Yep.
eat, something that happens to you can trigger a
Yes.
response. And
Mhm.
so you need to know what your triggers are so that
Mhm.
you can, if you do have an autoimmune disease, reduce the likelihood of a flare up or you know how to address that flare up immediately,
Yep.
but also just understanding what your immune response is in your body that might be causing inflammation, right? We talked about
Mhm.
inflammation
Mhm.
last week. And so all of those things are incredibly important. But oftentimes, our primary care physicians will not necessarily request those types of tests for
Absolutely.
us.
Right.
So if you come in and you are armed with the information, then they are more likely to go ahead and order those tests for you so that you can know what's going on with you at a physiological level so that they know how to
Mhm.
treat you best.
We have to advocate for ourselves. If we have friends in healthcare industries, we need to, being vulnerable,
Mhm.
ask them to help us navigate the system so that we can get what we need, right?
Mm.
So I think that's a good segue in talking about the role of stress and trauma on the immune
Mm.
system, right? We've been talking
Mhm.
about earlier that as Black people, our lives are heavy and we stay in a perpetual state of fight or flight, right? And
Right.
so, how does that contribute to our immune dysregulation?
Just like your immune system can be triggered by things in your environment, by the foods that you eat, they also can be triggered by stress. And
Hmm.
so we want to make sure that we are doing things to keep our stress under control. But guess
Sure.
what? One of the things that we know is that stress doesn't just trigger autoimmune responses like lupus or MS and that kind of
Mhm.
thing. For those who are living, for example, with herpes virus. Stress
Mhm.
is one of the main triggers for herpes virus. So
Absolutely.
you can go
Yeah.
a long time without having a flare up, and then all of a sudden you
Yeah.
got stressed out about something,
Yeah.
and now you're not only stressed about whatever you're stressing about, but now you have a flare up that you're dealing
Yeah.
with, and
Yeah.
so. that's just one example of
Sure.
how stress can trigger things in a person's body. And so
Mhm.
we wanna make sure that we are doing the things that we can do to reduce the stress that we experience. And so when we
Absolutely.
talk about self-care, right?
Yeah.
Self-care is not something that you can take for granted. You need to do it, and you also need to recognize when you are getting stressed so that
Yes.
you can shift and you can
Mhm.
then make sure that you are doing the things that are necessary in order to be well holistically.
Sure. So we definitely want to encourage setting and maintaining firm boundaries, especially when you are feeling like you are depleted. You know, when you're starting to feel worn down, right? A lot of
Mhm,
times, especially as Black women, we go, 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 but you can tell, and your body will let you know, but your mind will
mhm,
also let you know when you are at the point that you just need to reset. Of course, you and I always push the importance of mental health, talking to someone who is open and objective to letting you get off of your mind, your chest, your spirit, what you need to, and then giving you some additional skills to help you
that's
cope
right.
moving forward is so important. Sleep hygiene is really
Mm,
important. You know, when society said you need to get 8 hours of sleep, somehow it became reduced to you don't need that much sleep. Like people who are successful don't sleep that much. I don't know what to say to that because I'm not a million or billionaire,
mhm.
but I believe in getting a good night's sleep if possible. I believe in the nap ministry, child.
Yes, the nap ministry.
I feel like we owe our parents an apology for having a strict bedtime and then making us take naps when we were a kid. I love a bit. Is it 9, 10 o'clock? Oh God. Is it Saturday? Oh, it's Sunday. Black people, we normally good for the well, maybe just black preachers. After church, that after church nap be
After church nap. No, it's not
everything.
just for the preachers.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
for sure. Mhm,
Allowing your body to take rest and not constantly be hyperactive. Of course, we want to talk about reducing stress in terms of prayer and meditation and
mhm,
journaling, getting it off that way. And we have to hone it in all the time about movement, right?
mhm.
I always feel with a muscle disorder that's a catch 22. If I move, I hurt. But if I don't move, it's gonna
You
hurt
heard.
more or
Mhm,
later, in terms of, bone density, mass
mhm,
loss and, muscle mass loss and being incapacitated in the long run, right? And so we have to think,
mhm.
okay, we have to move to maintain our autoimmune function, but also they have proven results that exercise brings out,
Endorphins.
endorphins.
Right, and stay
Releases endorphins to make you, happier. Nature, of course, makes us happier. They even have things, called, like, grounding sheets and grounding shoes because they found out if we just stand in the sun and in the grass for even 10 minutes, it affects our quality of life, our immune system, and so forth and so on.
For sure. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because this past week was a very stressful one for me in terms of like all of these projects that I
Mhm,
had that were all coming due. And so I felt it. I could
mhm,
feel it in my body that I was
mhm,
stressed. And so literally after one of my meetings, I said, "I'm going to the park and I'm going to walk,"
mm,
because I
mhm,
knew that I would feel better. I knew that it was
mhm,
what my body needed, and I knew that it was going to reduce my stress level. And
mhm,
so 2 days this week, I went to the park and I walked. I said, "I don't care, although all these things are happening right now, if I
yeah,
don't attend to this,
good
then
for
I'm
you.
not going to be able to attend to those things." And so
Yeah,
sometimes you have to force yourself to give your body what your body really needs.
absolutely.
Even if it feels
Abs
like you don't have time to do
right.
it, you have to. You can't afford not to. And I think you mentioned earlier, T, that your body will tell you what it
Yeah, give you
needs. And
warning
if
signs.
you ignore it, your
Mhm.
body will shut itself down. And so
Yeah,
what you want to do is make sure that you are paying attention to those warning signs and you don't allow your body to say, okay, you know what? You don't wanna shut it down, so I'm gonna shut it down for you.
Right, right, right.
Because it's gonna cost you more in the long run. Now you're in the
Mhm.
hospital. Now you have all these bills and all of that, when if you had just taken a moment to just step back and say, "Okay, my body is telling me that I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I need
Yeah,
fresh air, I need sunlight, I need to decompress, I need to focus on my self-care." If you had just done those things when your body was screaming out to you, "Do these things," then it won't land you in the hospital or in the morgue. So you get to choose which one you want.
absolutely. Absolutely. Autoimmune diseases or any disease can increase our risk for depression, anxiety, social isolation, body image struggles. I think that was great that you were transparent about vitiligo. My father has vitiligo. I remember my great aunt had it, and she was kind of shamed for having it on her hand because she was dark skinned.
Mhm,
Of course, vitiligo takes the pigment away from your skin. And the
mhm,
first real like public image that we were able to see of that is the model Winnie Harlow, who
mhm,
has it, all over her body and
mhm,
still shows that she's beautiful and graceful and
right,
talented and all those things. And so, as we've talked about repeatedly, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and articulate what our quote unquote struggles may be can be so helpful for so many other people. Um,
mhm, agreed. Alright,
All right.
so now let's get into the herbal tea. Alright, so you all know the herbal tea is a segment where we talk about what you all are gossiping about, but we get to offer up something that's beneficial to our collective well-being. We consider it healthier gossip. So, what tea do you have today?
I think we're gonna start with the fact that T.I. and 50 Cent are in this collective beef.
Mm,
And I'm laughing because first and foremost, 50 Cent seems to get into it with everyone. So 50 Cent is a
mhm,
billionaire, a great business strategist. He's not just a rapper. He's not just an actor.
mhm,
I mean, he's doing the thing behind scenes, right? I don't even know if y'all remember that 50 Cent and Ellen DeGeneres were the people who invested in vitamin water, and that's how 50
mhm,
really
that's
made the
right,
bulk of his money, right?
that's
So
right.
he is an intelligent entrepreneur, a staple in the Black community. But he just always is beefing with somebody, and
Always.
now it's T.I., Tip has come back, got the number 1 solo out right now, Let 'Em Know, and somehow him and 50 got into it over deciding if they were gonna do a versus between them, and the next thing you know, 50 was doing 50, and then he ends up posting a picture of Tiny, who's over there minding her business, relaxed, kicking off her shoes, relaxed. And enjoying the beat, and he posts a picture of her performing where her skirt came up and her butt is whatever it is that a 40, 50-year-old woman's butt might be who done birthed out 16 kids.
That's
Um,
tacky on his
and right, so tacky, like back to body shaming. When we gonna stop
Mhm,
body shaming people? And put some negative comments on it. And then one of T.I.'s younger son, T.I. and Tiny's younger sons, King, came out. Mr. Standing on Business came out and told 50 Cent to dig up his deceased mother and to compare the
mm,
two and see who looked better. Golly.
mm.
I mean, they just taking the juggler to the
Oh
next
my god.
level. And now Tip King and another one of Tip's songs that made a diss track,
Not a diss
to
track.
50 Cent, a diss track, and on
You
top of
still
that,
do.
an AI video dropped from T.I.'s diss track with 50 Cent in it, and, like, at what point alright, we know Kendrick almost got into a beef with everybody in the rap world but Tip and won, Super Bowl win,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
are diss tracks still necessary in hip hop culture? Because we hip hop
mm.
heads. Is it still relevant?
I think it depends on the purpose of the diss track. So if the diss track is really just a PR stunt,
Mm.
then
Okay.
maybe so, because
Mhm.
that generates buzz. It's just another way of generating attention, which
Yeah.
in the entertainment industry is what you want. You want
Right.
attention,
Right.
because that drives sales for,
Mhm.
whatever it is. In this case, it's music. So, sure, if that's what the purpose is. But if the purpose is to tear down someone,
Mhm.
then I think we way too grown for that.
Right.
So I could see if the 20 somethings are doing something like that. But come on, yeah,
Mhm.
y'all 50 years old. Let's stop. Let's grow up. Let's be mature.
That's
Let's
mature.
get out here and do what Snoop is doing. I mean, good grief.
Right.
Snoop has completely reinvented himself and he's now
Absolutely.
at every
Hosting the
Olympics. I
Olympics,
mean,
right,
good grief,
right.
right? You don't see him, he doing gospel videos and
Oh my
songs and stuff,
gosh.
right? So I think that we have to set an example again. We talked about this before for those who are coming behind us. This is
Right.
stuff you do in your 20s. By the
Right,
time you
right.
get to, being 45, 50, 60 years old, yeah, later for that.
And then you spoke about Snoop, which I agree with you, but Snoop and Lil Duval said, "I ain't going back and forth with you,
I ain't going back
Tourette's."
and forth.
Go back and forth with you. So Tip and 50 need to get on that. I ain't going back and forth with you. But I do think this is a good lesson as adults in identifying what our triggers are, right? And other people who are not our family and friends, let me make that caveat, are not responsible for how they trigger us. Right.
Mhm.
But we are always responsible for what we do when we are triggered. And
Right?
so I think that's the lesson in this. I was a child, and I think we all grew up in an era where you could just be like, "Yo, mama." That was a
It
fighting
was a fight
word,
word.
right? If you ain't
Mhm.
had to say your mama and what your mama
Mhm.
was in a dress, your mama is. You just
Mhm.
said your mama, that's a fight. And so this girl that said your mama to me, and well,
It was a
I
wrap.
had I had to give her a two-piece and a biscuit to take home and explain that to her mama. But when my mama had to come up to the school because of that, she was like, "And what was this fight about?" And I told her, and she was like, "And then what?" I'm like, "What you mean? And then what?" Then, yeah, I mean, I had to do what I had to do. And my mom was like, "I had to take off work to come up here. Listen, I'm minding my
Mhm.
business at work. I don't care what these
Mhm.
little kids say about me.
Mhm.
Like, you better not put your hands on nobody
Mhm.
else
That's
because
right.
they say something about me while I'm at work to pay these bills and put food on the
Mhm.
table for you."
Mhm.
And that's what happened here. I think that escalated it. Basically, he was like, "Your mama." And King is a young adult, and we all know about
Mhm.
the frontal temple lobe not being fully developed. But okay, so he got mad. But now here the whole family coming, like, man, be
Mhm.
easy,
Be easy.
exponentially.
Yeah. It wasn't worth all that.
But is it
And
worth all
what
that? Yeah.
example are you setting for your young
That
adult
too. What
child,
example are
right?
you setting? Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
takeaway,
And
know
I
your
do
triggers.
know your triggers for sure. And I think that as the adults in the room, we have to receive grace, extend grace. We can still
Mm,
hold people accountable,
okay.
right? What would it have looked like if one or the other had picked up the call and was like, yo, man, what's up? Was this necessary? What's the point of all this?
Sure.
That's the mature response.
That's a mature response, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
sell records, but it is mature.
Exactly. So again, if your point is to sell your next single or whatever, then okay. I don't like it, but I get it. But at the
Right.
end of the day, I think we should all be out here working to cultivate relationships, sustain
That part.
relationships,
And we do
as
have
opposed
bigger
to
fish
tearing
to
down folks.
fry, right, but we also have bigger fish to fry in our communities.
For
Right
sure.
now, right? You
Mhm.
know, and that
A
and that
big
and that's
orange
the
one right now.
that's the other thing about being Black, right? Like, yeah, we joke around and we do all the things to get through, but, like, we always gotta be about our business, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like you said, the big orange one is out here, he ain't even playing checkers, he playing, like, Space Battle or something, you know what I mean? And we have to be collectively in arms to
Mhm.
right the atrocities that are happening right now,
Mhm.
and even as million and billionaires, like, y'all have a responsibility too, right? But, like,
Mhm.
some
That's
of this
right.
weight got to be on your shoulders to speak up and do
Mhm.
something on behalf of us that don't have the same type of platform, so, speaking of, we got bigger fish to fry, did you see that Uncle Luke is trying to run for government?
I mean,
Dun, dun,
can you
dun,
see the
well,
campaign videos
I wanna
right now?
I wanna
We have to say kudos to him for trying to do things to take back his community, to represent
Yes,
his community, right?
absolutely.
Now, if he had approached me about being his campaign manager, I'd be like, "Luke, now come on now, for real, you doing good in the hood." However, it's not just the parents of the team that you're coaching who are gonna be
Right,
voting for you, like, you
right.
have to get votes from a boatload of people. And they all know your histories. What does he really think the opposition's TV ads are going to be?
Right.
Right. They gonna
Yeah,
have half-naked women twerking.
exactly, showing the misogyny of it all. But our
Yeah.
president is a misogynist and a 37 count convicted felon,
Hey,
so
but as we talked about earlier, we can't play the same game that they do and expect to win. So,
right.
yeah. But kudos to Uncle Luke. I wish you luck, brother.
Yeah, yeah, we need some change, so and I'm not
Mhm.
saying that you might not have some good policies.
Right. Not
I'm
saying that at
staying
all.
tuned. I'm staying
Yes.
tuned, sir.
We will
I'm
be
staying tuned,
watching.
Unc. We'll be watching.
All right, fam. That's it for today's episode. Next week, we are talking about National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day.
Mm.
And we're going to have a guest speaker or two. So stay tuned
Stay tuned. Please like and share and enjoy life.
and life more abundantly.
Cheers.
Can I go back?